Hello there, and welcome back to yet another Nights in the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Past Lives. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcast, well, guess what? You can with this one too at Nice the Movies on Spotify. And if you are already listening to the podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel and Nice the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on with future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Past Lives. Now, this film doesn't come out in the UK, I think, for another week, if I am getting my dates correct, and I might not be, so do correct me if I'm wrong. But this film hasn't actually come out in the UK yet. However, at my local cinema, they were doing a preview screening of it. So, I had the option to go to the preview screening, and I thought, you know what? Let's do it, because I'd heard some really good things about this film, because it's already released in America and some other places, so I thought, yeah, let's go and see what all the fuss is about. And according to Google, the film follows the story of Nora and Hae Sung, apologies if I'm mispronouncing those names, two deeply connected childhood friends who are rest apart after Nora's family emigrates from South Korea to America. Decades later, they reunite, questioning what could have been. And that's basically the plot of Past Lives. And honestly, this film is phenomenal. It is absolutely brilliant. And I couldn't believe how taken I was by it, and how swept up I was in this central relationship between the main two characters. And just then I was about to say central love story, but it's not a love story. That's the whole point of the film. It's all about what could have been. That is the point of this movie. What could have been. Fantasy versus reality. Destiny. And, the decisions that are made for us and the decisions that we make in life and how they affect us. And yeah, it's that whole idea of what if. And I was really swept up by how the film, dived into these ideas. And yeah, I left this film broken. I mean, just talking about it now, you can see it's making me a bit speechless. And I don't know. It was on another level, and I really didn't expect to be taken by this film as I was. Like, I'd heard some good things about it, and I thought, it might be quite good. It might be one of those films that loads of people rave about, and I just don't get. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen when I was watching the cinema last night, and the ending of the film had me almost in tears. I mean, there's not much going on at the end of the film. It's not anything big and fantastic or anything like that. It's just, well, I'm not going to say what happens, but it's just quite a tender and quiet scene, but you're almost in tears because of the unspoken. That's one of the big themes of the film, the unspoken, what is said between the dialogue with these main two characters. Because one thing I really loved in the film was its use of sound, not necessarily the use of music, although the musical score is very good, but the use of sound, because as what he mentioned, there are quite a lot of sequences where there's just characters talking, but then it's when the characters pause and they just look at each other. That happens with loads of different characters, all these different characters in this film, and those are the moments which really caught me. I was like, wow, this whole idea of the unspoken, what is being said between the lines, and the central performances from Greta Lee and T.O.U, apologies if I'm mispronouncing those names, were utterly captivating, and they really I really believe in that story. I found it very authentic, I found it very real, and I never felt like I was watching actors give off performance. I mean, that might be because I don't really know these actors, I don't really know any of the actors in this film, and I think maybe that helped. But it didn't change the fact that I felt I was watching this real story about this relationship that could have been, this relationship that would have been perfect, but it just never happened. And it's so heartbreaking, but at the same time though, it's so heartwarming. It's got this really fantastic balance of both ideas, and you sit there and there are moments which make you smile, and at the same time there are moments which make you almost cry, and it's a phenomenal film. It really is. I don't really have any big problems with it. I will say the film is slow, and it might be testing for some people. Like, I can see why some people might find this film to be tedious, because it does take a bit of time to get to certain places. However, looking back on it, the fact that it was slow really didn't bother me in the long run. I mean, usually I don't like slow films, if I'm being completely honest, but I was just completely swept up by this film now. Like, the directing from, and one second, just get the director's name up here, Celine Song, I might be pronouncing their name wrong, and apologies if I am. They did a great job with the directing, and, just giving it quite this calm and tender feel. You never feel like anything is being rushed. It all feels so real. That's what I really was struck by, how real this film felt. And there's a lot of scenes in the film when it feels like the director just left the camera on these actors to do the scene. And if you watched my review of You Hurt My Feelings, which I reviewed a couple of weeks back now, that was one of my main criticisms about that film. I said it just felt like the director left the camera on these actors just to do the scene, and there wasn't really any direction going behind the scenes. That's what it felt like when You Hurt My Feelings. And funnily enough, Past Lives doesn't have, it isn't too dissimilar to You Hurt My Feelings. And I didn't really like that film. It wasn't for me. Maybe in about 10 years I will like it, but as of now, I don't like it. But the reason I preferred Past Lives is because, first of all, in You Hurt My Feelings, I struggled to differentiate between the actor and the characters, but also, in You Hurt My Feelings, I didn't really find anything relatable, whilst in Past Lives, I did find it relatable, though. I have had these friendships and relationships and whatnot, where you do sometimes wonder, if I kept in touch with them, what would it be like now? Would I still be good friends with them? Would my life be different? And I have had those moments where I think if I did take that leap or did that thing or went that direction, whatever, would my life be different? I have had those moments, and that's what this film is really about. What if this happened? What if these two characters weren't separated? What if Nora didn't emigrate? And the film takes this fascinating look at all of that, and takes a fascinating look at Nora's journey and who she marries at one point in the film. And, I know I've said it before, but I was so swept up by it, and it really, really took me off guard. And I love as well how at the start of the film, at the very opening of the movie, you are thrown into the perspective of these two characters that you never see, but you hear the voices of. These are two American citizens, and they're bystanders. They're watching over our two main characters having a conversation at a bar. And you're thrown into the perspective of these two American citizens at the start of the film, and then you never hear from them again. You don't even see them in the opening, you just hear their voices, and you never hear those voices again. But what's so genius about that opening is you become those bystanders. You become those people watching over these two characters throughout the rest of the film. It puts you into that perspective, and so it never feels intruding. You know, sometimes you watch a film about two characters or it's a romantic film. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like I'm intruding on their story. Yet you never feel that in this film because of the way it opens. And yeah, the more I think about the opening, the more genius I think it is, because you're just thrown in perspective and you are essentially the viewer in the film watching the characters, if you get what I mean. And I also loved how the film was a little bit self-referential. Like there's one point in the film where there's this male character. I'm not going to say who because it is a bit of a spoiler, so in case you haven't seen the movie yet, I mean you probably wouldn't have if you're in the UK because it hasn't actually come out in the UK yet. But there's one point in the film where this male character is talking to Nora, the lead female character of the film, and is saying to her how Nora and what's his name? I just forgot off the top of my head right now. How Nora and Hae Sung's story is perfect and it's something you can write about. And yet you're watching a film that, you know, you're watching a film where it has been written about. It's a bit self-referential. It's a very well-written film, by the way. The dialogue is so well written and so, at the same time, so sharp and so to the point, you know. It's, I mean, I don't know if sharp's the right word, but it's poignant. That's what I'm trying to say. It's very poignant. There's a lot of very poignant moments because of the dialogue and because of that whole idea of the unspoken. And I mean, yeah, it just really took me off guard. And I think the biggest reason it took me off guard was because of its themes and this whole idea of fantasy versus reality. Like, there's one point in the film where the two main characters have this conversation about what could have been, you know, what could be in a past life, and it taps into that idea a lot, hence the name of the film, Past Lives, what could have been, and the whole idea of fantasy versus reality, which is really caught up in the lead male's character's head. He keeps thinking about, you know, this fancy he has, and I mean, if you can't tell already, I love this film, and I'm slightly speechless talking about it because of how taken I was by this film. And it's beautifully shot. It's so well filmed, and the cinematography is, yeah, it's really great. And the directing, I felt, was so powerful because it let these actors just do the scene, and then at the same time the camera's not moving. I mean, I love films where the camera's constantly moving and there's a sprawling camera movement in like Scorsese or Paul Thomas Anderson films, but one of the reasons I really love the way the camera moved in this one, because it just felt like it was letting the characters be, and you just felt like you were watching this story that felt so true and felt so authentic and real, and oh my god, every ounce of the film feels completely and utterly real, and that is one of the big reasons it worked for me, but also because of the two central performances, and also because of the themes in the film, which really were executed so well. Like the way this film approaches these ideas of fantasy versus reality. What if you took this path? What if you ended up with this person? How it approached all those ideas, and also because of this whole idea of the unspoken. What are these characters saying to each other when they're not talking? And yeah, I just think it's phenomenal, and it's definitely one of the films of 2023. And I know I've said that quite a few times in reviews, but I mean, we've had some cracking films this year so far, and Past Lives, I mean, it's on another level. And, you know, I can see why this film wouldn't be for some people. I can see why some people would watch this film and, like I said, find it a bit tedious. I can see why some people wouldn't like it either, because in the end, a lot of what the film is characters talking. That's a lot of what this film is. Or staring into each other's eyes or anything like that. And I can see why that wouldn't be for some people. And usually it's not for me. And usually that stuff really isn't for me. However, this film really captivated me. And I was engaged by it, and it just, I felt like I was on this journey with these characters too. Like I felt like I was there with these characters, and I felt like I was developing with them and going through their journeys alongside them. And I think one of the big reasons for that as well is because of the opening scene. Yeah, it's a very, it's both a very tender and vivid film, or at the same time. Those ideas, it's both tender and vivid. And I mean, I would definitely recommend it. And I don't know if it's a film you necessarily need to go and rush out to the cinema to see. Like, I don't know if it's a film you need to see at the cinema. I'm very happy I did see it at the cinema, but, I don't know if it's a film you need to see at the cinema, because I don't even know if it's going to be showing at many cinemas. I don't think it's going to show at mine, because they usually don't show films like this, unfortunately. But if you do get a chance to check it out anywhere, I'd recommend it. Even if it's not in the cinema, check it out on streaming when it comes on streaming, or check it out on whatever, whenever you get the chance. I would really recommend this film, because it's it's so heartbreaking and it's aching. I read a news article describe this film as aching, and that really hit the nail on the head for me. It's an aching and heartbreaking film that leaves you speechless. And I was walking out the cinema, and this is the last thing I'll say. I was walking out the cinema after watching this yesterday, and I just remember looking at all the people in the cinema, and they were just stunned in their seats. No one was getting up when the credits rolled. I had to, because I had to go and get. I had to be somewhere quite quickly after, but no one wanted to get up, and I would have stayed in my seat if I didn't have to go somewhere quite quickly after. But yeah, you get the point I'm making. Everybody was just completely shook up by this film, and I completely understand why. It's very moving, and it's very, very good, and I loved it. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Past Lives, I'm going to say that it's a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I wasn't planning to give it a 9 out of 10. I've actually written down here that I was going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. But the more I talk about it, the more I haven't spoken about it loads, but just doing this review today has made me really, really reconsider my thoughts on the film in a positive light. Because I found that the more I was speaking about this film in this podcast, I could tell how speechless I was by it. I could tell how taken I was by it. And I mean, I'm getting a bit emotional thinking about it now. I don't even know these characters, although you feel like you know these characters, because again, you're put into that perspective at the start of the film, and even supporting characters and the side characters. There's one male side character in the film a lot, and if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. There's one side character who has a big role in this film, and I thought his character was done brilliantly as well. I loved all the moments of him, even so I'm not sure if you're meant to like him or not. But I loved the way his character was done. I loved how it approached some really touching subject matter as well, like people immigrating and having to create new identities. It tackles those subject matters like that quite early on, and I was like, wow, I never thought about that. People have to do that. People, when they emigrate, luckily, I'm fortunate enough to not ever have to do that, but people when they emigrate have to come up with new identities and have to completely change their lives, and that's another theme of the film. That's another theme that is focused on in this film, about this whole idea of the decisions that are made for us and how they affect us, and what of those decisions were made for us, and we made our own decisions. Yeah, I mean, like I've mentioned, it's phenomenal, it's magnificent, and I couldn't believe how taken I was by it. It's not going to be for everybody, and I can completely see why. But I loved it. I loved how it approached its themes. I loved its directing. It beautifully shot. I loved how tender it felt. I loved how focused it was. I loved the central storyline between these two characters. And I loved how the whole film is just about what if, and how relatable I found that. Yeah. It's a film that gets you thinking. And, That's what the best films do. The best films get you thinking, and there's a reason. There's a reason this film is getting the love it is, and yeah, I mean, you can tell how speechless I am. It broke me. It left me broken. That's what I've titled this podcast today, probably. It left me broken, and oh god, it's fantastic. And so, all in all, if you hadn't guessed already, I absolutely love this film, as I've already mentioned. And as I've already said, I'm going to say that Past Lives, I'm going to say that it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Past Lives already, then please let me know your thoughts on the film in the comment section below. And yeah, if you loved it as much as I do, please let me know. And if you didn't like it as much, please let me know as well. I'd love to hear some other varying thoughts on this film, what people thought about it just in general. I'd love to hear what people thought about this movie, because I want to... I was completely taken aback, as I've already said quite a few times. But anyway, guys, thank you as always for watching or listening. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As already said, thank you as always for watching or listening. And I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.